Good.
So Kayla, I was just about to start introducing you. So Kayla is one of my dear friends and also amazing. She is a health scientist by trade, and she says she's a nerdy biohacking, fitness, foodie enthusiast. I love that she comes from a very science background. She's got her bachelor's of science in health ecology. Ecology. Okay, I was right the first time. I'm like looking at that like 8 times. She's got her master's of science in public health, and she's a doctoral student, supposedly going to finish in 2021. Is that right?
Probably 2022.
Hey, PhDs, those are hard work. So she's currently working on her PhD in mind body medicine. So I'm so excited to have Kayla on here. And you guys interrupt us at any time and put comments in the chat box. This is unfiltered, so you will hear my puppy bark every once in a while. But the first thing, Kayla, I wanted you to tell us about is, what is biohacking?
Yeah, so the easiest way to think about biohacking is it's essentially anything we do that's going to affect our biology. But a more defined version of that is that it is taking control of your environment. So you're making changes to either your internal and or your external environment, meaning everything from the thoughts that you have to the food that you put into your body to the environment that you live in, chemicals that you use in your house for cleaning, anything like that. So you're taking control of that so that you can make physiological changes for specific health outcomes.
Yes. So do you guys look at epigenetics and like nutrigenomics and the whole way of changing genetic expression?
Yeah. So it's everything from a very basic biohack, such as drinking coffee to improve your energy or your focus, to really kind of complex biohacks like gene editing. Some people may have heard or seen different podcasts or different documentaries that are out there on gene editing, and it can be really cool because we have found out that we can actually change our genetics in a couple of ways. So one you mentioned is by our environment, because the environment determines what genes turn on and off. And then the other way is through actually changing DNA sequence, which can be done. And there's a whole field of DIY gene editors out there. I don't go that far though.
Yeah. Well, I always say with functional medicine, I'm like, your genes load the gun, but environment and nutrients pull the trigger. Yeah. And I think that's really empowering for people to realize that, like, yes, we can't control our genetic makeup. It sounds like now maybe we can control it, but we can change the expression of it. So we're born with certain genetics, but how can we change the expression, which is so exciting and why I love biohacking. So if you had to give it like a percentage, how much of biohacking is based on like self-experiment versus evidence-based? Or is it a 50-50?
Well, I think your self-experiments are always, hopefully, determined by the evidence base. That's the way that I do it, and that's the way that I suggest others do it. And I think a big part of self-experimentation is doing your research first. So hopping on PubMed or wherever you go to get your scientific articles, to learn about the evidence base, or podcasts or books, whatever, do your research and then decide what you want to experiment on yourself as far as making different changes to your environment. And then you can track your outcomes using your own biometrics and your own personal data.
And that's why I love that all the people listening tonight, that it's not like a one size fits all. Yeah. Like evidence, it can work for some people, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the right diet or the right thing for you. And I should also say that Kayla has a full-time job at the CDC, and everything she does with biohacking and her PhD, she does outside of there. So one of the big things that I want to know before we get into all these different biohacks is, you've got a lot of different things on your plate. Like, tell us, do you have a certain morning routine, or do you time batch? Like, how do you stay organized and calm and all of these things that you have going on?
I wish I could say I'm organized and calm all of the time, but I think I do a fairly good job considering how many things are going on. And definitely biohacking is one way that I stay on top of it. But because I biohack myself so that I can have better focus, higher energy, stay in a positive mood. And some of the things that I do on a daily basis are those things. So my morning routine is, what sets me up for success for the day. And so I always like to start the day with a gratitude practice because that gets
Mhm.
me into a positive mindset and starts the day off on the right foot. And then I keep it pretty simple after that because I don't have a lot of extra time. So, so from there, I may do a short mindfulness practice, whether it be meditation or a breathwork session or something like that, no longer than 10 or 15 minutes. And then I will hop in the shower, and I always finish off my shower with at least 30 seconds to a minute of cold.
That's one
And
thing we're going to talk about today.
yeah, um, which I love, and it really gets me energized and feeling really good. And then after that, I come downstairs and I whip up myself a bulletproof coffee. A lot of people know it as bulletproof coffee. It's just, for me, my recipe is just coffee, and then I blend it up in my NutriBullet with some MCT oil, and sometimes I add in cinnamon or a little bit of vanilla or like nutmeg or something. But that's the basic thing. And if you put it in the blender, it whips up like really nicely and it makes it nice and creamy and delicious. Um, and then after that, I sit down to my to-do list, and I batch things out based on how much time things are going to take me.
Mm-hmm.
And I always try to start off with the most difficult task early in the day, or the most like mentally challenging task of the day. I start with that, get it out of the way, and then I already am set up for a good day because I've had a success. And the other
Yep.
thing is, I do always make my bed when I get up because that is the first success of the day. And so, you're already winning at that point.
So I want to know from you guys listening in, how many of you guys make your bed? Put a yes or a no. I just want to see. I used to be so good about this, and now my husband and I leave so early. He's running out the door to make it to a strength class, and I do think it makes such a difference when you come home and you're getting ready for bed and your bed is made. So I'm just interested from you guys, how many of you make your bed every day? Because I'm already inspired to start making ours. Okay, we've got one person that says yes.
Well, and I think also having a clean, like tidy environment is part of biohacking because it really does affect your mindset, your productivity, and your distraction level if things are kind of organized and you have like a calm and
Yeah.
serene environment around you.
So most people are saying yes, always, most of the time. All right, we've got a lot of people that make their bed. That's great. So you kind of started with let's start with what you do in the morning. So tell us about the cold shower. Like, what does the science say? What have you experienced by implementing a cold shower?
Yeah, so it's also called cold thermogenesis. That is the science behind it. And to get the full benefits of cold thermogenesis, you would want to do either a regular practice of cold exposure, or like a prolonged period of cold exposure, or kind of a shocking level of cold exposure, like getting into an ice bath. But some people may have heard of like the Wim Hof method, and some people have just heard of people taking ice baths. But
Mhm.
the whole point behind all of it is, number one, the biggest benefit is it strengthens your autonomic nervous system so
Mhm.
that you are more resilient to stress. So, cold is a form of stress. And when you have that blast of cold, it kind of shocks your system, and you do switch into fight or flight. You switch into the sympathetic nervous system, which sounds like that would not be beneficial. Like, why would you want to put yourself into a state of stress? But after you do this for a prolonged period of time, or on a regular, like daily practice, your body will adapt to switch back to the parasympathetic nervous system a lot faster after that induction of stress. So let's say later on in the day, after you have a regular practice of this, you get rear-ended, or you get into a fight with your boss, or something unexpected, some amount of stress happens to you, and you are a lot more able to come back to a calm state and not let your physiological response get away from you. Whereas a lot of times, when stressful things happen, our heart rate will go up, our body temperature will go up, our thoughts will start racing, and we'll kind of lose control of our cool, right? Losing your cool, that's what it's about. So the ability to control that and to be a lot more resistant to stress is kind of what you're going for there. But the other big benefit is that it activates your brown fat. So in our bodies, we have two different types of fat. We have regular fat or white fat, and then we have brown fat. And brown fat, we don't have that much of it, but what it does is it's a very efficient way to take energy, so food, and create energy to warm your body. So when you go into a cold environment, your brown fat will activate and your metabolism will take the food or the stored food and turn it into body heat. And so it is a way to also boost your metabolism. And the more brown fat you have, the higher of a metabolism you'll have.
So a couple questions about that. So when you look at like the cortisol curve and like our natural cortisol, like you get that cortisol awakening response and it gradually goes down, and we should kind of look like that and be nice and low by bedtime. So when people are starting to implement this, does time of day matter? Like, do you really want to do that cold shower in the morning rather than if you're taking a shower before you go to bed, you wouldn't want to activate that fight or flight until you're more adaptive to be able to get back into that parasympathetic?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So if you are adapted to this and you have a regular practice and you've been doing it for a while, then you can still do this practice in the evening because you'll be more adaptive to the stress and you'll just go right back in to sympathetic. However, if you're just starting out, you definitely don't want to do a cold blast right before bed because it is going to wake you up and make you feel energized. I never really do it before bedtime because I prefer like a hot shower before bed to really relax.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, in the morning, it's going to help you to feel really energized and focused and kind of just give you a little extra boost. Plus, you're training your nervous system.
That's one thing. We like monitor people's saliva at the 4 points. And we have a lot of patients that don't get that cortisol awakening. And it's hard to get out of bed. And they feel this lack of motivation, this depression. They don't get that cortisol that they need to take on the day. And so cold showers can be so beneficial to like make yourself get that cortisol awakening response. You said that you do it for like 20, 30 seconds in the morning. Mm-hmm. Is there like a gold standard?
There's a lot of opinions out there. There isn't really any research on length of time. However, there is research that anything below room temperature starts to activate cold thermogenesis in your body.
Okay.
So the brown fat begins to be activated anything below room temperature. So even just sleeping in a cold room is going to give you a little bit of cold thermogenesis. If you go outside when it's cold without a jacket on, it's going to do the same thing. So it's more about building up that practice over time. But the longer you can go, the more benefit you have. However, I will say that my time in the cold shower varies depending on my stress load. So if I'm having like a super stressful week or event or something going on in my life, I'm less likely to stay under the cold water because I'm just already stressed. And adding any level of stress, whether it be a cold shower or something else that you're taking on your plate, it's all adding to the same stress bucket, and even exercise is included in that. So that's why you really don't want to push on a heavy exercise day either if you're already stressed and kind of worn out.
Yes. Do you feel like cryotherapy and cold showers kind of go in the same category? So all the benefits you've talked about, you get from cryotherapy. And that's going to be colder than you can achieve in a shower, right? Like
it's colder and it's a shorter period. So that's what I meant by, so if you don't want to do as cold, which showers aren't really going to get super cold. And a lot of people who are like extreme about this say there's no benefit to a cold shower because it doesn't possibly get cold enough. But because it's lower than room temperature, there is a benefit.
Right.
However, if you shock your body with an extreme level of cold, like an ice bath or like cryotherapy, you're going to activate that brown fat a lot more, or a lot faster and more efficiently. So if you want to do a shorter length, then colder. If you want to go longer, then you don't have to go quite as cold.
I've done the cold shower. I have not done the ice bath, and I saw that you did it, and I was like, I need to do it. I'm like, oh, cold is just not my friend. But in Chicago, I was there this last weekend. They have cryotherapy everywhere, and I'm like, why don't people just walk outside? It's negative 16 degrees right now.
Honestly, I would just go outside.
So, okay. So we talked about the cold shower. Now tell me, you put just MCT in your Bulletproof coffee.
Mm-hmm.
So why do you use MCTs? And like, tell us first, for those people that don't know, what MCTs are.
Yeah, so MCTs are medium chain triglycerides, and they're derived from coconut oil. And so that's part of why the whole coconut oil craze is happening. But people have to understand that regular coconut oil and straight MCTs are not the same thing.
Right.
MCTs are derived from the coconut oil because they're medium chain triglycerides, which are pulled from the regular coconut oil. And medium chain triglycerides are a special type of fat that is a shorter chain fat than like long chain triglycerides and short chain triglycerides. But the medium chain triglycerides are the best way to describe it is they are more bioavailable. Your body can use MCTs a lot more efficiently than any other type of fat. And your body can convert MCTs into ketones a lot more efficiently than any other fat. So the conversion factor and the bioavailability is why I use MCTs, because my purpose is to get into ketosis a little faster and to switch to flip that metabolic switch so that my body has an easier time flipping over to ketones for fuel instead of glucose, which ketones for fuel is a lot more efficient for your brain than glucose. So, and it's also, there's metabolic benefits, and I think the MCT oil, actually, a lot of people will also put grass-fed ghee into their coffee. And I've done that, but I think the MCTs just taste a little bit better too. So
yeah, sometimes I'll mix MCT oil even in with my greens. We use something called Easy Bean Greens, and it's amazing. I don't know if it's the fat or what it is, but the combination, it's like got a synergy. It's like the synergistic effect. Like I can feel the alkalinity and like feel the energy from the MCT and the greens. I love it. And this is one of the things that we were talking about, because Kayla, are you right now on a ketogenic diet?
I do cyclic keto.
Okay.
So I actually don't really prescribe to any diet.
Yes.
I eat based on certain principles. No processed food. I try to limit my sugars or any inflammatory foods. And I eat high quality fats because it's really important for my brain to work as efficiently as it can. But I'm also a duathlete, and I have found that being on more of a keto diet, being fat adapted as an endurance athlete specifically, is very beneficial, because we only carry maybe like 2,000 calories worth of our fuel from glucose on our body, and you have to keep refueling to keep that energy source up. Yep. However, we have an almost unlimited amount of energy in the form of fat, ketones, on our body. So it's a really more efficient fuel, even for athletic performance, endurance wise.
So do you measure, like if you are in the cycle where you're going keto, do you measure the ketones in your urine? Do you go that far, or do you just like focus more on the healthy fats and keeping your carbs really low?
When I first started doing it, I would do a ketone like breathalyzer thing, and it measures the ketones from your breath. And after I figured out what it feels like to be in ketosis, I stopped measuring because I didn't want to. After a while, your levels of ketones will be kind of lower and lower, but you'll still be getting the benefits of ketosis. And a lot of people kind of obsess over the numbers, um, and so I don't like to do that to myself. So I just know what it feels like, and you can feel the difference in your clarity, in your mental focus, and in your energy, that you know what it feels like.
Yeah. And I think I was telling you this, like I've had so many patients have amazing results on a keto diet, and I've read all the research, and I know like, especially cancer and epilepsy, ADD, ADHD, there's just so much research and evidence out there. And I tried it and it was so hard because I was measuring my ketones. And if I ate too much broccoli, if I ate too much, like even low carb veggies, I was out of ketosis. And I personally tend to I do eat protein, animal protein, but I tend to be more plant-based. And it was just like terrible for me. So I do a really high fat, lower carb diet naturally, but to stay in ketosis, I felt like if I can't eat as much broccoli and veggies as I want, I just can't do this long term. But it's just, so I did genetic testing because I was just so curious. And like based on my body and my hormones, like it told me on this genetic test that going low carb for my body type and my genetics, I'm not going to thrive as well. Like I really shouldn't drop my carbs below 150 grams per day. I still do sometimes, but in order for me to be in ketosis, I had to drop below like 50 grams and be at like 25 grams of carbs, where some of my patients can be at 40, 50, 60 grams of carbs and still be in ketosis. So for those of you that are listening, like I always say experiment, like that's where that self-experimenting comes in. And I like support my patients that do it. For me, I just like to be more high fat and use MCT oil, use avocado and olives and all these things. But I also want to be able to eat as much broccoli as I want to eat.
Well, and the other thing is, if this is not going to be your regular diet or lifestyle, but you still want to get the benefits of ketosis and you want to like train your body to be more fat adapted, then you can do that in a couple of ways. One, you can take exogenous ketones.
Yes.
What we've been talking about so far are endogenous ketones, meaning that it's the ones that your body is making for yourself. Exogenous ketones are taken, like a supplement, but they still have the same benefits, and they can actually aid if you're doing a keto diet and you're having a hard time getting into ketosis. You can add exogenous ketones and it will get you into ketosis a little bit faster. There's a lot of research going on with that, actually, for epilepsy and for even other cognitive disorders. So so it's exciting. It's an exciting field, but that's another way that you can do it. And then the other way is you could do some intermittent fasting, which is going to help you get into ketosis a lot faster. And then you don't have to do it every day, but if you just want to receive the benefits, a few times a week and start to build your body's endurance to ketosis, then you can do it that way.
And those exogenous ketones are game changing. Like those were like my lifeline when I was on it. Somebody was asking, how do you determine how to get your body in ketosis? So do you want to answer that, or you want me to, or we'll tag team it?
Yeah. So the way that essentially you're going to have to cut down your carbs very low to get into ketosis. And like Kristin said, it's going to be different for everyone. I was always like anything under 60 grams of carbs and I was golden. And I can tell even when I'm not even trying, but I know that I haven't had very many carbs, but I've had a lot of fats, that my body is going into ketosis. I think what you should do is, if you haven't done this type of diet before, first of all, for women, you want to see where you are in your cycle and do it in a portion of your cycle where you're feeling high energy and really good. So for a lot of women, the times where your hormones are fluctuating may not be the time where you're going to feel the best doing a keto diet. So even if you don't track your cycle and you don't know which phase you're in, you can map it out by how you feel. So you'll usually have a week where you really feel your best, most women do, that would be a good time to try this sort of diet, because then it's not going to have such an impact on your hormones either, because you really don't want to, if you're having some hormonal imbalance, this could potentially make it worse.
Yeah.
So you do want to pay attention to how your body's feeling. And if you do the keto diet and you go like strict keto, some people experience what is called like a keto hangover or a keto headache. I did that when I went strict keto for a month and I felt like crap. So for me, it was better to cycle. So I would cycle back into carb refeeding and then just do the keto diet for maybe 4 to 5 days. And then I would have a couple of days of carb refeeding, and my body feels a lot better that way.
Yeah. And I think, Sarah, it's really important when you're trying to figure out what your carb count is to measure your ketones in your urine. Because I find a lot of people, I tend to be more like you need to get it from plant-based sources too. I think a lot of people do more of that, like Atkins, where they're doing heavy whipping cream, lots of butter, bacon, red meat, all these things. And I'm more on the side of like, you can have those things in moderation if you're on keto, but like you really want to get plant sources. And so I think there's like really nothing worse than doing keto, but not being in ketosis and eating all of those saturated fats that are processed. So I always suggest when people are doing it, like you really need to be in ketosis to get the benefit of being fat adaptive and to really shift your metabolic state. So make sure you're measuring it.
Yeah. And even let's say you are getting into ketosis, but you're having all of those, what I would call toxic foods that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
You are benefiting your body in one way, but you're also poisoning your body in another way. So you're going to probably do more damage than good over time. And that's what I call dirty keto. And I don't think even a lot of people will lose weight on dirty keto. However, they're doing long-term damage by putting all of those toxins and things that you really don't want in your food.
Increasing up those omega-6s, triggering inflammation, all those things that we track and watch so closely.
Yes.
So tell me, you mentioned intermittent fasting. Because I know that this is something that I do, but I do it, I think, a little bit differently than you. So I want to hear kind of your experience, the research, how you feel on it. Tell us about intermittent fasting.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, it's a tool to get into ketosis and make that metabolic switch. But the reason actually why I started it was not even on purpose. And I didn't even know that it was called intermittent fasting. But I've always been the type of person that if I eat breakfast, I am like wiped out for the rest of the day. I'm just tired.
Yeah.
I don't do well when I eat breakfast. And, I was always pushed by my parents or colleagues, you need to eat breakfast. It's the most important meal of the day. And I don't know why, but my intuition always just told me, like, don't eat breakfast. So I would skip breakfast most of the time and feel great that way. And then I learned later on why that is. One, because I'm getting into ketosis, a state of ketosis where you're making that metabolic switch away from using glucose as your primary source of energy to using ketones, which we talked about. But after about 12 hours, it's between 12 and 16, depending on the person, you are switching over to the ketones for fuel. Not fully, but you're starting to make that switch. And then at about 24 hours, but even before then, you reach autophagy, which is cellular cleaning. It's your body's self-healing mechanism, and it's your body's self-cleaning mechanism. So what happens is your body, even somewhere in the 16-hour range, your body is going to start breaking down old proteins and building new ones from essential amino acids. So your body will not do this if you have a constant, if you're constantly eating, you're constantly giving it proteins and things to take energy from. And then when you cut that energy source off, your body has to tap into its own sources and it starts to clean out the junk in a way. And so that's the biggest benefit. But you will feel mentally more sharp and have a lot of energy. But some people are not like me, and they do better to eat breakfast and then have that as like their largest meal of the day, and then they may not eat again until bedtime, or they make a different window of eating versus not eating.
Yes. And I think that's one of the things. So I think in my experience, like every guy does fantastic doing an intermittent fasting either way. Cause like their hormones and everything, they aren't altered the same way females are. So for me, I know, and with a lot of my patients, I've monitored their cortisol levels, their stress hormone, and I've monitored their thyroid levels. Some of them that fast in the morning and are drinking coffee and their blood sugar gets too low, it triggers a cortisol response and it blocks the T4 to T3 conversion. Where some of my women do it that way and their hormone levels look great and they feel amazing. So like Kayla is a perfect example. She's like, I feel really good doing this. And that's where that self-experimenting comes in. And I encourage, like, when you start doing it, check your blood and see like, how is it impacting your insulin and your cortisol and your T3? Because some people, they'll actually like increase their glucose will actually go up because their blood sugar is getting too low. So their liver is secreting more glucose to help get their blood sugar elevated. So I always suggest looking at your levels and seeing. But for me, I know like I monitor my resting heart rate, my heart rate variability, some of those other indicators. And if I eat like 4 hours before bed, my sleep quality is altered and my resting heart rate is elevated. Where if I have a bunch of time to digest before I go to sleep, so I prefer to eat like, I still go a little bit of time when I wake up. I like to not eat right away, but then I'll cut off my eating ideally for sometimes even 5 hours before I go to bed so I can fully digest. And then my resting heart rate, my blood sugar, my mental clarity, my energy when I wake up is so much better. So I think it's the same thing. It's like exploring and seeing. But I think one thing that we know between how both of us do it is we don't need to be eating all day long and we don't need to be snacking all day long. Yeah. It's something we used to tell everybody, like, or I did like 5 years ago in medicine. I was like, eat small, frequent meals, keep your blood sugar stable. But what we're doing is triggering insulin all day long, which triggers inflammation. So I'm so happy with the direction science is going. And we use it stat. I don't know if you've heard of Prolon, which is the 5-day fasting mimicking diet.
Oh, yes.
So it was just, a lot of people have been asking us about it because it was just on Goop and Gwyneth Paltrow did it. And she reduced down her telomere age. So like her biological age rather than her chronological age, a couple of years just from doing the 5-day fast because of that autophagy and because of the stem cell and human growth hormone. And that, when I've done Prolon, the 5-day fasting mimicking, I feel amazing. And it's because you're getting into that fasting state and you're cleaning out your system, my mental clarity, my energy, and it's all plant-based, vegan, gluten-free, dairy-free. So I highly suggest you guys check it out. We are at Stat, we do them in groups because some people need accountability because you're literally dropping to 750 calories. And so we'll do it all together as groups just for that accountability aspect. But I think they put some of their profit from every box back into research. So they are very evidence-based, which is what I love.
Yeah. And, I think that would be a much easier way to try a long-term fast. Because there are a lot of amazing benefits for a long-term fast. And especially if you can get to that 72-hour mark, then you're really going to reach the peak HGH, and you're going to reach peak autophagy, and your insulin level is going to get to its very lowest point. And so you're going to increase that insulin sensitivity, which is what we want. And you're going to decrease insulin resistance. But I think, it's really popular right now to do a long-term fast, but if you've never even done intermittent fasting, then I don't suggest just hopping into a long-term fast. So I think that something like that would be a lot easier to maintain for the full 5 days and not cause any distress.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's amazing. And the other thing I like to always point out too is like really being mindful of where you're at mentally, because we see a lot, I don't know if you've heard the term orthorexia. So I always like to talk about this at the same time because, there's so many things out there that you can do for your body, but if it starts interfering with your quality of life, if you start becoming too restrictive, if your BMI gets too low, that's one thing. I think it kind of becomes like a domino effect where we try to do things that are good for us and it turns into these extreme eating patterns. So I think with all of this, it's all about balance too. And we don't want to develop orthorexia where people are fasting 3 days a week, every week. So
Yeah, no, and I think the culture, especially in the biohacking world, can be very, first of all, male dominated and very masculine, where there's a lot of pressure to be competitive with each other and try to outdo each other as far as your performance and your biohacking tech and all this stuff. And it's, for me, what we're trying to do is we're trying to optimize our biology. And so that doesn't have to do with anybody else. It
Yeah.
has to do with yourself. And so, as long as you're feeling really good, then you're doing what's right for you. Don't feel pressured by, whatever else is out there trending right now.
Yes. Yes, I think that's key. And then tell me, so one of the things we've talked about a couple of times is this heart rate variability. And it's one of the things that we just posted on Stat Wellness. And I just love talking about it because it's everything that you started off with the cold shower, that autonomic nervous system health. So do you track your heart rate variability, or like, where do you feel like the evidence is based on that?
Heart rate variability is my favorite measure. It's my favorite biometric for injury prevention. So, as a endurance athlete with a pretty stringent exercise routine, I need to know how rested my body is before I go into a really heavy or high endurance workout. So, the way that I make decisions for my training routine is based on my heart rate variability, which is your best measure for resilience. It tells you how resilient you are to stress and how resilient your nervous system is. And it also tells you how well rested you are. So, I track my heart rate variability every night I use a BioStrap. And I like that one because it has a whole sleep lab that tracks all your biometrics throughout the night, and it will tell you how you're doing over time, and it will also say how what lifestyle factors are improving or decreasing your different biometrics, including heart rate variability. So I look at my sleep score when I wake up every morning, and I see where my heart rate variability is. And typically, my number is somewhere around 110. And then if it's down from there, then I know that I'm not well rested and maybe I shouldn't push a really heavy workout. And if it's up from there, then I know it's a really good day. I could probably push myself and do that really long run or whatever that big push is going to be. Or if I have like a stressful event or something, having a higher heart rate variability is really going to help. So that's the way that I use it. And that has helped me to be 2 years now without any major injuries, and it helps me to determine what exercises I'm going to get the most benefit out, because if you're overexhausted and you push yourself too hard, you're going to cause more harm than good, and your body is not going to regenerate your muscle cells. It's not going to regenerate your energy, and your nervous system is going to take a hit. So that's the way that I use it.
And I think, so two things about that is, one, they've done a lot of research, like even Whoop has, based on surveys, that people are drinking a lot less alcohol because they're watching their heart rate variability.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I just love that, because if you know it's going to impact your recovery, you're less likely to even have that one glass of wine or that one cocktail. So that's been fun, just kind of seeing the research on that front. And I think the other thing is it takes out the subjective side. Like if you were like, today I'm going to have a really intense workout and you had it planned for Wednesday, like in your mind, you're going to do it because you said you were going to do it. But then now you have this physiological data to be like, no, it's not the best day to do that, because I really think like people that are more competitive, and I'm one of them, like if I set my mind to do something, I'm going to do it. But now if I have a reason why I should tweak it, I'm going to be more likely to do that. So I love data, and I love this whole area of biohacking. I think it's so fun and exciting.
Yeah. Heart rate variability and measuring that and then basing my workouts around that has been probably the biggest game changer. I mean, as you know, I do all these other things, but that has been the one that has really changed my whole exercise routine. I'm actually working out a lot less, or I'm having less frequent workouts and more efficient workouts because I'm tracking this metric. And this year was the first year that I've made Team USA in my training, or in my races. So something's working, and I'm pretty sure that has a huge impact.
It does. Oh, that's so exciting. And that's one of the things for me. Like I used to run marathons and do lots of endurance training. But when I opened stat and I had to skim on my sleep a lot and work long hours, my body didn't have the capacity to do endurance training. So
Yeah.
I'm ready to like biohack and get back in a place where I'm able to do those things again, but it's all like that season of your life and changing things. So I think that's really important. And the last kind of two things before we open it up for questions that I wanted to talk about. The first one is infrared sauna. So we've talked about cold therapy. What do you think of the exact opposite? Like where is the research or do you see benefit in infrared saunas?
Yeah. So infrared saunas are basically, instead of going to a regular sauna where it's heating from the outside in, it's like making you hot, and then from the outside in you get hot, and then your body starts to compensate and you start to sweat to try to cool yourself down. But an infrared sauna typically is not very hot at all. It may actually just feel normal, but what it's doing is that infrared light, that wavelength, is penetrating deeper into your tissue, and it's warming you from the inside out. So it's actually the heat is being generated from inside of you, not outside. And so the benefit of that is, one, you're going to have a metabolic change, and two is you're going to more efficiently push out toxins and get the like cellular level benefits from infrared sauna than regular sauna. Both are beneficial, but the infrared sauna is more efficient.
And efficient with also detoxification. Is there any evidence on that? Because I know that's what a lot of my patients will do it for, like heavy metals or co-infections or different things like that they're trying to push out of their cell. Have you seen any research supporting that or anything to comment on that?
So again, it's more about the efficiency. So both regular sauna or even exercise, anything that makes you sweat is going to have the same effect. I would argue that infrared sauna and working out, like, and getting a sweat that way, are just as efficient as each other.
Yeah.
Because you're heating from the inside out, and it's coming from your own metabolism and energy, then just heat on from the outside, making you hot, and then you're perspiring to push out the heat to cool yourself down.
What about electrolytes post endurance training, sweating, infrared sauna? Is that something that you do?
Yeah, and I just do simple sea salt. Sea salt and water. It definitely doesn't need to be a Gatorade. If you're going to do electrolytes, do not get some sugary drink mix, because you're just really causing a lot of inflammation to your body that already has inflammation from the workout. So if you want to do electrolytes, I think it's great, but just regular old sea salt will work. Or if you want to just get some spring water, like raw spring water, has all the essential minerals in it that will remineralize your body that you lose through sweat. So even like, I think Perrier, or I don't even know how to say it, but it's like a natural spring water that will have all the same minerals that you need.
Yep. Topo Chico is a mineral water too.
Yeah. And there's all different kinds, and there's services now that will deliver raw spring water in glass jars so that you don't lose that mineral content to the plastic. And you can get that delivered to your house, and that's actually what I use.
So somebody commented, not to change subjects, but is it true that intermittent fasting slows down your metabolism over time?
That is not true from the research that I've looked at. In fact, the opposite is true. However, like Kristin mentioned, if you don't do it the right way, then it could have effects on your hormones. And if your hormones get out of whack, then all your hormones interact with each other. So let's say your cortisol levels start to get screwed up, and then your melatonin levels get screwed up, and then eventually it trickles down to your sex hormones get messed up, and then your thyroid hormones get messed up, and that will slow down your metabolism. For sure. So I think it's more about doing it the right way. And again, anyone who says that you have to do it this certain way, or this many days per week, or this many hours, or this window, they're wrong. Everybody's different, and so you really have to pay attention to what feels good for you, and track your biometrics. Honestly, if you're looking at, like, if you have a
Yeah.
BioStrap or whatever you have, um, if you look at your metrics overnight and you look at your respiration and your heart rate and your heart rate variability and your blood oxygen levels and all these things, these numbers will tell you if you're doing damage to your body.
Yep.
So,
and I think the other thing too with intermittent fasting is it's really not, it's about the time that you're eating, not about being in a calorie deficit long term. And I think that's a lot of people think intermittent fasting, so they just cut down their calories.
oh, no.
Yeah, but it's about, so when I meet with women and I'm like, okay, you're doing intermittent fasting, what does your lunch and your dinner look like? They're eating like a very small salad with not a lot of fats. Like they're doing it to lose weight. So in their mind, they're cutting back on the portions.
Okay.
So
that's the problem.
That does slow down your metabolism because your body over time gets used to the calories it's eating and consuming. So if you are going to drop your calories into a deficit long term, it can slow down your metabolism if you're not being careful of some of these other variables.
Yeah, exactly. And I eat the same amount of calories on days that I intermittent fast and days that I don't. Like you said, it's just a shorter window. Sometimes I'll even do OMOD, which is 1 meal a day, which works for like a really busy lifestyle too.
Yep.
But I'll still eat the same number of calories, just in a very shorter period of time. And the point is that you're giving your body a long break of no calorie intake so that your body can optimize.
Yeah. Digest, break down, all those things. So I think that's really important to consider, Meredith. And then the last thing I want to talk about before we do any other questions is meditation. So that's something that I'm really big into. I know you are as well. What are some of the benefits of meditation, and does it look different for everybody? Kind of walk us through that process.
Yeah, so meditation, breath work, or even any sort of mindfulness practice. Meditation is a mindfulness practice. Gratitude, journaling, all of these things have the same physiological benefit, which is that it is, first of all, it is putting your body into a parasympathetic nervous system state, and it's also getting you to be able to tap into that state more easily. But the biggest benefit is bringing self-awareness, or building your self-awareness, and it's bringing your attention to the mind-body connection. The mind and body are intricately connected. However, so many people are not tapped into their body whatsoever, and they're completely ignoring it. So even just bringing your attention to your breath, or bringing your attention to your body, doing a little scan of how you're feeling, what's aching, what's feeling good, what needs some attention. These are things that we don't typically do on a regular basis. And, we're so busy and we're just running around that we're not paying attention to what our body is telling us. Our body is telling us, sending us messages all day long, and we're a lot of times not listening to those messages. So mindfulness can bring your awareness back to that. So it can bring awareness to your physical body, but it can also bring awareness to your thought processes, and it can bring awareness to your subconscious programming. So all of our behaviors are based on our subconscious programming. And these are things that a lot of times we're not even aware that they're there, or why we do the things we do. But when you start to bring attention to your behaviors and to your thought process and to what happens when you're just still in your mind, you can start to reverse engineer those things and figure out where it's coming from, what is the subconscious programming, and then you're able to actually reprogram those things so that you can actually change behaviors effectively. So I would say that is probably the biggest benefit. And then the other one is that it's really just increasing the space and the ability for you to be less reactive. So there's a stimulus and then there's a response. And there's some time period between. For most people who are not connected with themselves, their bodies, their thought processes, their subconscious programming, that space is real small. So as soon as something happens, they react, and that's that. However, meditation gives you the ability to stretch that time period out, and you can actually make a conscious decision on how you want to react.
I think that is so key. And I think it goes back to stress also as a perception. And when you're able to use meditation and be in tune with all of that, you're able to change your perception about the stress in the first place. So you don't even have that physiological impact, which is all that space. And I think it's also when you're in that parasympathetic state, as you guys probably are aware, but that's where you rest and digest. And I think it's very interesting that the United States is the most constipated country in the world. And we're also some of the most stressed people in the world. And they are so highly connected when we're talking about that fight or flight, that sympathetic state all the time, not entering into that parasympathetic state, being able to rest and digest. So some of my patients that are constipated, it is irritable bowel syndrome where nothing is wrong. There's not food sensitivities. Their gut microbiome looks good. And it really is stimulated by this overactive sympathetic nervous system. So just a tidbit. What question for you guys that are in here, what questions do you guys have for Kayla? She is like expert of all of these things. Parasympathetic effect on liver detoxification. Any thoughts on that?
Well, any body system, any organ is going to function optimally when it's in an optimal environment. So a stressed environment takes your body's resources away from the regular functions that are supposed to happen, and it puts it into that fight or flight. So a lot of your energy is going to be going to increasing your heart rate, getting the blood flowing, getting the blood to your muscles so that you can run, even though, most of the time running is not necessary because it's an email or something. But,
yeah.
but I would say that,
I think that was my thing making a text message.
Oh, okay. I would say that any organ is going to function way better when you are not under a lot of stress. And for me, actually, this is relevant for migraines. So I've always had migraines, and it wasn't until I realized that my stress levels, so I call it a stress bucket. We all have a stress bucket. Some of our stress buckets are real big, meaning that we can take on a lot of stress before it overflows out the top. Some of our stress buckets are real small. And so it doesn't take that much before it overflows and things start misfiring all throughout the body. For me, it's migraines. So when my stress bucket is too full, no matter whether it's positive or negative stress, that could be exercise, that could be fasting, that could be lack of sleep, it could be regular stress, getting in a fight with somebody, whatever. When my stress level is too high and that bucket is overflowing, I eat one trigger food and it instant migraine. When my stress bucket is low and it is maintained, I can have all the trigger foods and I will not get a migraine. So that just shows that the function of the body is really dependent on your stress levels.
It's all that threshold for sure. And I think, Athena, with your question on liver detoxification is I always think of rest and digest as everything within your abdomen. So when you're in a sympathetic nervous system state, it impacts your blood sugar, it impacts your liver function, it impacts motility, it impacts stomach acid, pancreatic function. So if you're chronically in a sympathetic nervous system state, you are not going to detox and eliminate as effectively, because also every bowel movement you have is your body's way of detoxing everything that came out of your liver. So yes, I think that there is definitely a positive impact allowing yourself to get into that parasympathetic state. And we get that too when we're sleeping. Like when we're sleeping, our body is processing and breaking down and detoxing and eliminating. So there is a huge connection there.
And the other thing about sleep and HRV is, if your HRV is too high while you're sleeping, you're not getting that detox that you're supposed to be getting in the night. So that's another reason why you really want to pay attention to that.
Yes. Any other questions for Kayla before we wrap it up for the night? This was great. So much good information. I know sometimes there's a delay, so we'll wait about 30 more seconds and then we will say good night to you guys if nobody has any other questions. And make sure while you guys are commenting on your questions, next Tuesday, Kim Shaper is going to be on here and we're going to be talking about, hello.
He's grumpy.
Hello. Is that his name?
Brian, yeah.
Oh, Brian?
Yeah.
Brian, he's grumpy. I love that. I love when dogs have just like such people name. Like this is Stuart. This is Brian. I love it.
I have Mike and Brian. Mike is the other one, but he's somewhere else.
I wish Charlie was here. She was jumping up on me and playing tug of war. If you guys saw my arms, she's a little handful. But next Tuesday, Kim Shaper is going to be on here and we're going to talk about the Fit Female Guide. It's going to be at 4 p.m. So if you can't make it live, still sign up. The replays get sent out. So you guys are going to get the replay if you didn't have things to take notes on and want to listen to it again. Good. I'm glad that you guys loved it. Good. So people really enjoyed it. I know that everybody learned a lot. We had close to 100 people sign up that are going to be listening to the replay. Sometimes it's hard for people to be in here live. So thank you guys for commenting and answering questions. And Kayla, do you want to put your Instagram and website in the chat box so that they know how to follow you and check you out?
Yeah, sure. And my Instagram handle is BioCurious_Kayla. And then I also have a podcast where I talk about all this nerdy stuff all the time with different experts, from around the world. So if you're interested in learning more about biohacking and want to dive deeper into any of these things, that's a good place.
But thank you, Kayla, so much for being on here. This was great. And I'm sure we will meet again for an interview at some point with you guys. So
absolutely. Thank you for having me. And thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Yes. All right. Good night, guys.
Good night.